The iPhone 14 Pro was a magnificent phone with an upgraded camera system compared to the iPhone 13 Pro as well as the previous versions. The only issue was Apple only had 1 year to adjust everything to fit the improvements, which also included a much larger sensor. This is exactly where the iPhone 15 Pro came in and added on a multitude of camera features that just blew my mind. One of them in particular is just incredible, and we will be giving you a detailed explanation with plenty of examples about this in our video. Let the facts speak. You love to see it, some nice photos to kick off our comparison. Take a look at my cat. On the 15 Pro, he does look slightly more colorful, I think. I personally like both photos, but the surprise will come out when we crop into such a degree you can see my cat's whiskers close up. The reason why the 15 Pro is much clearer is that we shot these with the new 24 megapixel mode compared to the 12 megapixel mode of the 14 Pro. The way this works is that both phones have a 48 megapixel sensor. To sum it up in one sentence, pixel binning is a process that combines data from 4 pixels into 1, turning a 48 megapixel photo into 12 megapixels. On the 15 Pro though, you can ensure that after this process, an extra 48 megapixel photo is taken and then laid over the pixel bin photo to give it more detail, making the photo 24 megapixels. This isn't the only update though, as the 15 Pro is better at managing HDR. Take a look at this photo with the bike in the foreground and notice how the sky on the left side of the background is blown out on the 14 Pro. On the 15 Pro, however, this is a non-issue, which is quite impressive. iPhones are notorious for HDR issues, especially in ultra-wide, but it seems that their latest release has come out the gate swinging. These two photos were taken in pretty low light conditions, and cropping into my face will reveal everything for both of them. It is the first time in a very long time that iPhones actually perform well at night, and this by itself is a major camera improvement. In ultra-wide, we are able to see the same HDR issues and solutions that I just mentioned. The horizon is completely blown out on the 14 Pro, while the 15 Pro seems to have everything in the bag. Another example is this photo next to a restaurant in one of the centers of Berlin. The horizon is blown out once again on the 14, while the 15 does a good job of keeping the photo bright and still not losing details in the distance. Sure, it doesn't always work out like this for the 14 Pro, but in terms of consistency, the newer model is just much more stable. Since the main upgrades were about HDR, the photos taken indoors as well as low light don't really change that much, as both phones are still relatively similar in performance. Obviously, since this is the ultra-wide camera, it doesn't have the same interesting upgrades that we saw with the main camera, so the photos being of similar quality isn't that big of a surprise. As for portrait mode, there is a nice update that we noticed immediately after taking some photos. The first one is the ability to switch to a portrait photo from a regular one, or the other way around thanks to the facial recognition software upgrades of the iPhone 15 Pro. I think that this feature is amazing and gives you a lot of versatility to not miss out on types of photos that you prefer. I personally really like the iPhone's portrait photos in general, especially when compared to a lot of Android phones. My one big issue was how iPhones simply cut the hair, even though their edge detection is really good in general. They just seem to not really care about fine-tuning how individual strands of hair stick out and would just gloss over the top and sides of my head. When cropped in, this especially didn't look that appealing because it just looked like a bad haircut. Now though, this has been improved quite a bit, and the way that the iPhone software approaches edge detection has hit a new level. It's also possible to see that the edges around my body in general are looking more consistent on the 15 Pro, so portrait mode is just one more area that Apple has impressed with their new attention to detail on their newest release. And this personally pleases me because it has been something that I've been hung on for quite a long time, and I mentioned to friends as it was annoying that the phone with arguably the best portrait photos couldn't push themselves just a bit more to change the way they interpret hair, and you could probably push yourselves to hit those like and subscribe buttons to support the channel. That being said, videos are probably one thing that really hasn't changed, and I'm actually not surprised about this purely because iPhones have always been the camera phone to shoot videos with. Sometime around the iPhone 11 to 12, at least for me, the quality of videos with iPhones got to such a level that every year the improvements were quite minimal. Regardless if we're looking at sunny weather, indoor footage with artificial lighting, and even very low light conditions, iPhones almost always perform better than the competition. The iPhone 14 and the 15 Pro both are at a very good level of quality, and I honestly can't see any significant differences. However, with the new iPhone 15 Pro, you are now able to shoot in a very special format called ProRes LOG. Take a look at the video on your screen and you might be thinking, why does the footage look like this? The reason is because this is how log format works. In easy to understand terms, it enables your video to preserve more information in the highlights and shadows so that you have more flexibility to edit your video in post-production. Now, I want you to understand that this mode being on a mobile phone really isn't that normal. Even some actual cameras aren't able to shoot in this format, so having it work flawlessly on a mobile phone is truly mind-blowing. On the iPhone 14 Pro, you were able to shoot in ProRes without the log, but you were limited to 1080p 30 frames. On the 15 Pro, you can shoot in ProRes SDR, HDR, or log at 4K. You're able to choose from the camera options on which one you prefer to use. If you know what you're doing, then log is great, but HDR or even SDR is fine in situations where you don't feel like comfortable in your skills and knowledge about color grading a video. Keep in mind though that ProRes at 1080p on the iPhone 14 Pro was not a feature to be trifled with. The videos took a lot of space. I can't even begin to imagine how much space shooting in 4K on the iPhone 15 Pro will take up, but there is a solution. You can record directly into an external storage, which also gives you the option to record in 60 frames instead of 30, and this is the only way you can do this. All in all, new and upcoming prospective filmmakers could definitely benefit from buying the iPhone 15 Pro and just shooting all their videos with their phone because, frankly, if you're not a professional, it seems like you really don't need to carry around a camera anymore for most situations. In zoom, both of them have a 3x optical zoom lens, with the iPhone 15 Pro Max having a 5x1, just like my Google Pixel 7 Pro. Just like the video category, the results are pretty much the same and not really anything else to take into account. I guess it's not a surprise that we're seeing the same situation in terms of stabilization. Apple made a huge upgrade moving from the iPhone 13 Pro to the 14 Pro, as the 14 is the first phone in Apple's arsenal that was outfitted with an active stabilization mode that allowed the user to shoot in 2.8K rather than 1080p. This is brand new, so naturally it got passed on without much change. On the other hand, testing the front camera was actually interesting. Apple did lower that unnecessary sharpness they had in their phones in previous years, so this is a positive for the 15 Pro. That being said, there were a couple of photos like the indoor one, which I preferred the 14 Pro, but I think it's actually more of a consistency issue with the focus not landing perfectly. Overall, their front cameras are still similar quality and take good photos when the lighting is enough. At night though, my balcony was very dark and the focus didn't land on either of them, so we obviously can't say that the iPhone is a top contender for selfies. We also shot a front camera video for you social media enthusiasts out there, and it's fair to say that the iPhone 15 Pro looks slightly better with warmer skin tones and less sharpness. This is a change that came in this year, and I can easily say that I appreciate the lesser sharpness compared to last year's model, as the videos just look easier on the eyes and are also easier to watch in general. As you know from the beginning of this video, this is a direct comparison of the two newest iPhones, and I have a lot of praise for the other one, but the one I'm talking to right now is the iPhone 14 Pro, and we are obviously testing out the mic quality. Over here is the brand new iPhone 15 Pro, and it was a big surprise, but there were actually a lot of camera improvements, not so much the phone, but usually iPhones don't have this many different improvements in their newest versions, and we are very happy to have our hands on the iPhone 15 Pro. We definitely like the mic quality of the 15 Pro more. It's a bit more consistent because the noise cancelling has been tweaked, and we think that the audio quality is better than the S23 Ultra when we didn't have this thought last year with the iPhone 14 Pro. Slow motion is the same. Apple likes to keep a standard of 240 frames in 1080p, which is pretty acceptable, but doesn't really let you do cool footage. You're also able to shoot in 120 frames, but we personally like to stick to 240. As for macro, it's kind of obvious that there won't be big changes when the difference is only one generation. In this case, I actually don't think there are any changes at all, maybe small quality of life changes that aren't that obvious. They both work pretty well. In conclusion, we deduced that the iPhone 15 Pro is a significant improvement over the 14 Pro when the main focus is the camera. The phones in general both work great, but there are some features and upgrades on the 15 Pro's camera which I know will be appealing to some photographers and videographers that I personally know. If you guys have any additional thoughts, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. See you around.